let us actually begin the program. Rob, would you like to introduce Dr. Ray?
My pleasure. So, Dr. Darrel Ray is the founder and president of this organization, Recovering from Religion. He has been a psychologist for over 30 years and is the author of 4 books, including The God Virus, How Religion Infects Our Lives and Culture, and Sex and God, How Religion Distorts Sexuality. Dr. Ray has been a student of religion most of his life and holds a master's degree in religion as well as a bachelor's degree in sociology and anthropology with a doctorate in psychology. Welcome back as a guest speaker, Dr. Ray.
Okay, there we go.
There you are.
There you go.
Share my screen. All right. Nope, that's the wrong thing.
We're seeing some graphs and statistiks.
Well,
Dr. Ray is always working. He's always researching, always learning more.
Okay, I got to go backwards. Now I got to find where my... Oh, here it is.
Rush.
Okay, then I got to make sure I hit the sound thing. That we practiced all this earlier.
We practiced this. This is how we trained.
Yeah, it didn't work on me. I'm pretty bad at this shit.
It's okay. We're just going to keep doing it over and over again.
Okay,
you're going to have to just keep coming back.
Now we'll see if... All right, so now we're moving forward. I've got some sound, and the sound was the main problem that I had to worry about. So I'm gonna see if we can get this going. Can you hear that? All right, we're gonna...
Pat Robertson once said, it's a long downward slide that will lead to legalizing sex with ducks if 2 men can stand side by side. God, I hope he's right, cause if gay marriage becomes lawful, I'm gonna find myself a duck and legally do something awful. Awful. Ducks, sex with ducks, we'll do it in the rain. Ducks, yeah, ducks, got those web feet on my brain. We'll find a pond, we'll find a puddle. Put your beak in mine and we'll cuddle. It's a feeling I can't name when sex with ducks and gay marriage are one and the same. Gonna goose that goose, gonna quack that swan, gonna rubber my ducky all night long, gonna whack that mallard till its feathers plume, gonna Huey, Dewey, Louie all over the room. Scrooge McDuck, gonna give it to you. Dive into your gold until you say DuckTales. Woo! Ducks, sex with ducks, we'll do it in the rain. Ducks, yeah, ducks, those feathered bodies are insane. We'll find a pond, we'll find a puddle. I'll be the wind beneath your wings and we'll cuddle. It's a feeling I can't name when sex with ducks and gay marriage are one and the same. One and the same. One and the same.
But did anybody ever actually make that argument, or is this just an over-the-top parody?
Yes, this was a real thing that people were saying. Sorry, Darrel, go ahead.
That's all right. Yeah, I'm trying to. Okay, all right. So, yeah, that was a real thing, among other things, sex with other animals too, I guess. But anyway, it's that song actually came out about not long before the gay marriage became legal. So anyway, I just thought we'd start it off here because we are going to be talking about ducks, although not having sex with ducks is not the main thing. So the title of my talk tonight is What the Pope Does Not Know About Human Sexuality. And I doubt if he knows much because he's never had sex. He's never even masturbated once. Now that's our old Pope. I forgot, I should have put our new Pope in there. But anyway, he's been, they've been telling us what our sexuality should and shouldn't be, but we're not Catholic sexuals here. Some of you may have been Baptist sexuals. Some may have been evangelical sexuals, but I'm not, and we'll find out what we are as we go through the talk today. So the focus of the reason I do this talk, some of you may have even seen this talk before. I've updated a little bit, but the focus on this talk is to show that we have evolution is all around us and inside of us and on us. And things like, why do humans have breasts? Why is the penis shaped the way it is? Why is a vagina and clitoris the way they're put together, so to speak? And what about the chemistry of the semen and the vaginal fluid? Those say a lot about what's going on evolutionarily with us as a species. And why are so many women loud when they have orgasms? I mean, it's serious. It gets real serious for about 60 to 70% of women. I see a hand was go up there.
I love it.
Really
It's
loud.
serious.
The viscosity of your semen is, I mean, we're not going to talk about all these things, but I'm just giving you these examples. The actual composition of your sperm, you don't have just one kind of sperm, you have 3 or 4 different kinds of sperm. And all these things are evidence that evolution is happening in your body. So sex organs are the most rapidly evolving component of any sexual organism by far. And I want to show you, this is Carl Linnaeus, who was known as a sex pervert. Oh, no, I mean a biologist, a botanist, actually, a botanist. But people said he was a pervert because all he wanted to do was look at sex organs. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to look at some sex organs. So if you guys aren't, don't want to get into pornography or anything, you can turn your head or leave. I mean, I'm not here to push any pornography down your throat. But we're going to start off just by looking at sex organs. So here's the first sex organ.
So do we know that YouTube is not going to pull this video because it's showing a flower?
Yep. So that's a sex organ, by the way. You may not have thought of it, but Carl Linnaeus realized that you could classify plants, especially flowering plants. Help me out, Rob. What's sperm? The criteria for a flowering plant is angiosperms. Angiosperms. You can classify angiosperms by their flower. So that's a sex organ right there. That's another sex organ. And just those two, I could give you several other, but those two sex organs, those two flowers, are actually closely related. And yet you can see they look quite different, but they're closely related because the sex organs of that particular species or group of flowers is evolving for whatever reason, because it wants to attract pollinators or whatever the flower is trying to do at that point in its life. Animal sex organs evolve rapidly as well. And that brings us to ducks. Ducks' sex organs are evolving. And this is our first exposure to non-flower pornography here. So once again, I'm just giving you a little warning. If you don't want to watch pornography, you don't have to watch this. But we're going to look at a penis of a duck. And don't ask me how the darn biologist got this to work, but here it is. This, oh yes, we can allow that. Watch very carefully here. And right there at the end, it goes, boop. All right. Now with any kind of porn, you need to watch it twice. So we're going to look at it again here, just so you didn't miss anything. But look at this. Look real carefully at what we got here. Does that, if you're a penis owner, does that look like yours? I'm pretty sure it doesn't. So for many, many years, people were wondering, why do ducks have penises that are in weird shape? It's like a corkscrew shape there. And one biologist out of, I believe, the University of Edinburgh, a woman, decided she was going to look into this. There were all sorts of theories about why duck penises were corkscrewed. And you can see on the left-hand side here, there's a vagina, and you can see a penis of a duck. Now, it's harder to see the vagina, physically. So it took a while to figure out what the female vagina looked like. But what she found, Dr. Patricia Brennan, what she found was something that had eluded biologists for for 100 years at least. And that is, why does the male have a corkscrew penis? The problem was they had theories about evolution and why the male had a corkscrew penis, but nobody had thought to look at the female's vaginal reproductive tract. And she was the first one to do that. So she dissected a female duck, and that's what she found on the left. That vagina is just as corkscrewed, if not worse, than the male penis. And so she did several experiments with pipettes, you see on the right here. If the pipette was corkscrewed the same way as the male penis was, the male could get his penis in much farther. If it was corkscrewed the opposite direction, it couldn't get in hardly at all. If it was straight, he could get in fairly far, but still was difficult. And what she found was the male can only insert his penis as far as the female allows it. The female can twist her vaginal tract, and it twists in the opposite direction of the male penis. So some years ago, a senator right here in Missouri, close to where I live, said that women can stop that whole thing. There's no such thing as rape, that women can stop getting pregnant if they want to. And he was terribly wrong about that, but he wasn't wrong about ducks, because ducks literally can stop. What Dr. Brennan did was look at the eggs that came from the females, and she found, I used to have ducks in my front yard until the coyotes ate them all. I had about, I can't remember, 12 or 13 ducks. And what I noticed was if a female liked a male duck, she would waddle around in a real sexy way. I didn't realize ducks could waddle sexily, but they can. I watched it in my own front yard. And then when he came up to mate with her, she would just make herself available. He would hop on. And by the way, what would happen was what we saw in that movie. Only that movie was slowed down 10 times. It is 10 times as fast. So, if you want long coitus, don't become a duck. You're not going to get much there. I don't even know if ducks have an orgasm or not. But so anyway, I would watch these female get down and let the male mate with her. Of course, as soon as he was finished, which was like 3 seconds, all the other males would come and jump on her. And they would literally rape her. And it would be really, really clear that she did not want sex with the rest of those males. And she would run away, she would fly away, she'd jump in the water, she would even go underwater if she could to get away from those males, because she did not want to mate with those other males. And what Dr. Brennan found when she looked at the eggs of female ducks, she found that only about 1 or 2% of the eggs were fathered by males she did not want to mate with. The males that she did want to mate with and successfully mated with her were about 98% of the eggs. So in this case, there's a selectivity. The female can select who she wants to have sex with, who she wants to fertilize her eggs. And this is really interesting, because you can see a battle between, we have this common idea of the battle of the sexes, but this is not the battle of the sexes. This is the battle of the sex organs and the battle of the sperm and egg. It's the battle of the way we reproduce. And that's what we can see so clearly in ducks is the female is controlling her own reproductive tract, and the males are trying to father eggs without her permission. So we get this battle of who's gonna control who gets to fertilize those eggs.
So in conversations regarding evolution, especially by creationists who deny it, a lot of times the pushback is like describing, what natural selection is. And I don't hear enough talk about sexual selection. I think that's a very important, thing that helps any species evolve.
Absolutely. And this is a great example of sexual selection. And we see it all throughout nature. I mean, whether it's a female spider allowing a male to mate with them or not, or a peacock, male peacock showing all the feathers to try and attract the female. Darwin really was, when he first talked about sexual selection, it was controversial, back in the Victorian era, which that's when he was writing in 1859, the Victorian era, sex was really something you had to be careful about talking about. And so survival of the fittest became the most popular way to talk about evolution. But the fact is, sexual selection is every bit as important as the so-called survival of the fittest. And that's what you're referring to, Rob.
Right, right. The random mutations that then get weeded out, which ones are good and which ones are bad, as opposed to this essentially intentional thing by, one of the sexes of the species with the other. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And it absolutely is intentional. That's why we have this enormous displays on peacocks. There's a lot of cost. What Darwin noticed was there's a lot of cost goes into sexual selection. And the female or the male, it depends on which way it's going in that particular species, because it can vary from one species to the next. Now, I want to introduce you to a new idea or a biological concept called antagonistic coevolution. And that means, antagonism. There's some conflict that's going on. And you can see in the ducks that there's antagonism between the way the male wants to function and the way the female wants to function. But every species has a mating strategy. And those mating strategies are unique to males and females. So we don't just have a duck mating strategy. We have a duck female mating strategy and a duck male mating strategy. And this will become important later on when we talk about humans, because every species has a mating strategy, and it's divided into the female mating strategy and male mating strategy. I went to Iceland a year and a half, 2 years, almost 2 years ago now. Incredible trip. Really loved it. We spent 3 weeks in Iceland and just really enjoyed ourselves. But the most unexpected thing I found in Iceland was the penis museum. It was like 2 blocks from the hotel we were staying in Reykjavik. And voila, right there is a sample. They had hundreds of penises in this museum. I just took this picture. This is 4 different types of bovines, cattle, if you will, I guess you could say. And look at how much different each one of those penises are. But those are different species. Each one of those penises belongs to a different species. That's a lot of difference between just penises within something that we think of, cows. Cows or bovines, they're all the same, but they're not all the same. And their sex organs are evolving rapidly, just like we saw in the flowers and just like we see in the ducks. Sex organs are constantly moving back and forth. If we went back 3 million, 5 million, 10 million years ago and looked at the heart of a human, it would look almost identical to the heart we have today. But if we went back 10 million years ago in humans, we would see significant differences in our sex organs today that we would have had 10 million years ago. Same thing for other mammals. Their sex organs are constantly changing, evolving. As a result of sexual selection that Rob mentioned earlier, the competition, the antagonistic coevolution. Keep that in mind, antagonistic coevolution. Males and females are both evolving, but they're evolving in conflict, so to speak, with each other. Come on, move along. Okay. This is the spiny anteater. It's also known as the echidna. It only is found in Australia and especially New Zealand. It's like a porcupine. It's got spines on it that are pretty sharp. I've actually held one, and it's got a tongue that's like 9 inches long. Its tongue is almost as long as it is, and it can eat ants by sticking its tongue down into the hole. But when it wants to mate, that's its penis. It has a 4-headed penis. And some of you already have seen this talk, I'm guessing, because I noticed you gave the right answer for the echidna. Who was it? I can't remember who it was that gave the right answer for the echidna, but you get extra points tonight if you gave the right answer. So the echidna has 4 penis heads, which is wild. Why do they need 4 penis heads? But if you look at the way the penis functions, when the echidna ejaculates, it only ejaculates out of 2 of those heads, and it alternates. So the 2 center heads, it'll ejaculate out of, say, the right center head, and then the next time it has sex, it'll ejaculate out of the left center head, and then back the other way. The 2 heads on the outside don't ejaculate; they don't throw out sperm. Why? I have no idea. But the echidna has only been separated from the rest of the planet for about 40 million years. So it's evolved from a very early monotreme. There's only 2 monotremes species on the planet right now. Any idea what the other one is? The platypus. So the platypus and the echidna are closely related. Look at that. They're closely related, and yet they look really, really different from each other. And different from
somebody asked that in the chat. They predicted that you were going to say something about the platypi or platypuses, depending on how you say it. I am a favor of platypi, but I understand this is a contentious topic here about how we make the plural. Are you telling us they also have this setup?
Well, I don't know. I don't know about platypuses. They do have a setup, but it's different than this. I'm not familiar with their reproductive tract quite as much, though. But it would be funny to ask that question.
I would Google it right now, but I'm afraid of what my history will look like, so I'm not going to do that.
Okay. Well, we won't put you in that danger, Rob. Okay, moving right along here. So sex is actively evolving in us and in other great apes. Remember, we are one of the great apes. Don't let anybody tell you any different. There are 4 great apes. Some people argue that there's 5, but I'm going to stick with 4. I'm sticking with 4, and I'm not changing it either. Okay, so let's look at, well, come on. So 4 great apes. The gorillas, one of the great apes. Chimpanzees, another one of the 4 great apes. And the bonobos that look a lot like chimpanzees and used to be thought to be chimpanzees. It wasn't until about 30 years ago that we discovered that chimpanzees and bonobos were different species. And they're about 10% lighter and smaller, and they have a very different mating strategy that we'll talk about in a minute. And then, of course, we've got humans. So that's the 4 great apes. Each primate has a sexual style and strategy. And none of all the primates, virtually none of them are monogamous. All the evidence, but there is also evidence of antagonistic coevolution in all of primates. Now, you could argue that gibbons were not a great ape. Gibbons are one of the few primates that are ostensibly monogamous, but even they, if tempted, will be non-monogamous if they can get away with it. But anyway, within the 4 great apes, each primate has its own strategy, but the strategy is not necessarily monogamy. So gorillas, let's start with gorillas. Gorillas are polygamous. That means 1 male, many females, and there's high sexual dimorphism. Dimorphism means is it a difference between the sexes? In many times it means the difference in size. So in case of mammals, it almost always means there's a difference in size. It doesn't necessarily mean that in birds. There can be sexual dimorphism, and that might be that the male is colorful and female is not. That's another way of looking at dimorphism. But in gorillas, a gorilla male can be 2 to 3 times bigger than a female, and one male may have a harem of 3 to 4 females. However, the females in the gorilla mating strategy, the females are mobile. If they want to join up with a male, they can do it. If they want to leave the male, they can do it. What's the male going to do? They don't have leashes on the females in the gorilla world. When they have sex, it lasts less than a minute, and the penis size for a gorilla is only about 1.5 inches long. about as big as as big as a radish, if you can look at it in that size. And they also have small testes. Gorilla testes are half the size of humans, and they don't produce nearly as much sperm as we do. And they only mate infrequently. They only mate when the female is in estrus. Estrus means they're fertile, ready to reproduce. And again, like I said, lasts only a minute. So there's this penis size for the gorilla, or I got a chip on there, chip, bonobo, chimp. That should read chimp and bonobo, human. That's funny. I've never caught that spelling. Anyway, those are the three. And the human penis is bigger by far than the chimp or the bonobo's penis. Interesting. Something's going on there. So sex can take on functions besides reproduction. So when we think of sex, we all obviously think, oh, it's reproduction. But that's not necessarily true in all species. Some species use sex for other things too. Just like our hands were evolved probably, and feet evolved for walking, we have changed. We use those things for climbing trees, and we use those things for picking fruit and for hunting and for using rocks to create as tools. We've taken a part of our body and used it for other things that it wasn't originally intended for, so to speak. Well, that's what's going on with sex. We have taken, and other species too, have taken sex and they're using it for something different. So sex can be used to establish dominance hierarchies. And we see this in the gorillas, in the chimpanzees. Dominance is really important in those groups and societies, chimps and gorillas. And sex is used in that way. Females join a male because of his dominance within the greater community. Younger adolescent males or non-mating males, they're put off to the side. They may never get to mate with the female. And some females may never want to mate with those males. They're only attracted to the dominant male. So there we have a dominance hierarchy. We can also use sex for bonding, which is what the bonobos, we'll talk about a little bit later, use. And we can also use sex for conflict management and stress relief. I mean, how many times have you had sex and felt much more relaxed after you had sex, including masturbation? It allows you to relax and not be as stressful, because sex is a great stress reliever. Here's the chimpanzee, and I did spell it right there. Here's where we see a little bit different kind of antagonistic coevolution. Chimps have a multi-mate strategy. One male will mate with many females, and females will mate with multiple males, but usually only males that are in the hierarchy. The top 2 or 3 males within the troop would be able to mate with any of the females in the troop. Chimps have a larger penis than we saw in the gorillas, and they have incredibly big testes. They make twice as much sperm, semen as we humans do, and 4 times as much as the gorillas do. So it's a lot of sperm coming from the males. Females mate, but they only want to mate with the higher status males. And no matter what happens, the female is going to seek out the highest male that she's attracted to, of course, and that's whom she will, quote, present herself so that she's clear. And as we all have seen in the nature films, chimpanzees show a very, very engorged butt that shows that they are, in fact, receptive. They're ready to mate. And they don't want to mate, generally speaking, don't want to mate if they're not in estrus. They will, and they have, depending on circumstances, I guess. I don't know what the female's thinking, but generally speaking, that's what goes on. And males create an alliance that in the chimpanzee community will have 2 or 3 top males, and they dominate the entire group and especially dominate all the females. Sex for them lasts about 30 seconds, so not very long. Now, bonobos, they are the interesting one to me because they're not like chimps and they're not like gorillas. They are female dominated species. And females rule the roost, females govern everything. And when the females create alliances, almost like the chimpanzees create alliances, only it's male chimpanzees. Female bonobos create an alliance where they, to hold the troop together and protect the troop. And sex is everywhere among bonobos. And they have what we know, what we'll call today, hidden estrus. You cannot look at a bonobo female and tell if she's fertile or not. However, you can look at a chimp female and tell if she's fertile just by how red her butt is. Now, there is some color difference within bonobos, but not nearly enough for it to be obvious. So we can see right there, there's some huge difference between two species that are probably separated by no more than 4 million years, maybe even less. Chimpanzees over here, bonobos over here. And the females have evolved a totally different menstrual advertisement, if you will, or non-advertisement. Bonobos' penises are about the same size as chimpanzees. They also have huge testes, and they produce the same amount of semen and sperm as chimpanzees do. But they can mate, and they will mate anytime with almost anyone. Males and females will mate multiple times a day. And males will mate with males, females will mate with females, you name it. They will copulate in almost any combination. And they tend to use sex as a stress reliever, and among other things. For example, if you're walking, if you hear a lion coming through the forest, and you want to hide from the lions, so you don't get eaten. If you're a bonobo, when the danger is gone, the bonobos all come together and they have an orgy. They have sex because it's a stress reliever for them. If you find, and this is good for Thanksgiving or Christmas, just want to remind you, sometimes there's practical advice here. If you find fruit in the forest, a fruit tree, you holler to all your buddies, all the other people in the bonobo tribe, and you say, hey, there's a fruit tree over here. Let's come on over and have a feast for Thanksgiving, bonobo Thanksgiving, I guess. But the one rule about bonobos is you have to have an orgy before you start eating the fruit. So everybody will have sex with everybody, and they'll holler and scream and have a good time, and then they'll go up and eat the fruit. If two bonobos get in a fight, whether it's a male and a female, or two males or two females, when the fight is over, they have sex with one another. Now, those are all the variations of bonobo peacemaking, I guess you could say. And sounds pretty fun to me. Sounds like an interesting way to go about being sexual. Their sex lasts about 30 or 40 seconds, but you get lots of sex within. And it's pretty clear, according to Franz de Waal, that females have a lot of orgasms. It's not just copulation, it is orgasms. There are thousands of sex acts among bonobos for every live birth. And think about that. They have sex thousands of times, and yet they only have about one baby every 2 or 3 years. How can you have that much sex and not have babies? We're going to come back and think about that in a little bit. Here's a comic I found going to the zoo. He says here that bonobo societies, females are in charge, and sex rather than violence is used to keep order. And she says, well, thank God we've evolved. I don't know what we evolved to, but here's the shape of the bonobo penis. It's the same size and shape as the chimpanzee, by the way. Now, if you're a penis owner, that bonobo on the right, just to answer the question, does that look like your penis? I'm guessing it doesn't. If you do not own a penis if you've got a clitoris and a vaginal tract, the one on the left, does that look like yours? Probably not, because bonobos have enormous clitorises, and they seem to be very functional. They seem to really like to play with their clitorises. They masturbate with their clitorises. They touch and manipulate each other's clitorises. And if you look down here you'll see two bonobos having sex missionary style. Now, if according to the photograph, the place I pulled this photo off of, that's two females having sex missionary style. It's not a male and female. Now, I'm going to give you a little imagine this. You are a homeschooling Christian parent, and you take your kids to the San Diego Zoo where they've got bonobos. And as you're walking through, you see two females having sex missionary style and kissing each other, because bonobos actually prefer missionary style. They will mate doggy style, but they prefer missionary style in the way they have sex with one another, both males and females. Isn't that interesting? Now, what would you tell your kids if you were that homeschooling parent? And
Well, as somebody put in the chat, as long as it was missionary, probably would be okay with the Christian.
that probably okay. I had a guy years ago. I used to know him. I don't know what happened to him. He went all through 8 years of seminary as a Catholic priest. Right at the end, like within the last month, he went to the zoo for some reason. Was at the zoo, and he saw. I don't know if it was bonobos or chimpanzee. I don't know that he even knew, but he saw them having sex, and I also saw them masturbating. And he thought, well, the Pope believes in evolution, and we're descended from those apes, so why is it bad or wrong to masturbate or have sex? And he said that was the first step to him becoming an atheist. He was a full-blown priest. If he'd have stuck around 1 month, he'd have been a totally certified priest, whatever that is. Rob, you're a Catholic, or were I don't know the terms, but what do they call it?
I've repressed all that stuff that I learned.
Okay, I won't bring any bad memories up for you.
But I have to say, with that picture that you had up there, put it back, please, if you can go back.
Oh, yeah, let me see if I can.
Yeah, as we talked in the pregame show, I'm a fan of the modern Planet of the Apes movies, and none of them have anything remote. They don't have anything at all. It's just Ken down there. It's so
Just Ken.
Unrealistic.
Yep. Well, I'm sorry, but that's Hollywood for you, I guess. So now let's talk about the human mating strategy. And remember, we have mentioned antagonistic coevolution in humans. That's what we're going to look at. So somewhere between 4 and 6 million years ago, this was our ancestor. Or at the time that we split off from chimpanzees and bonobos. So somewhere between 4 and 6 million years ago, the bonobos went their way, chimpanzees went their way, and we went our way. So 3 different branches off doing their own thing, which means that that in 4 million years, you can have a lot of things happen in those 4 million years. Well, one thing we're pretty sure about with this particular animal species, ancestor of ours, was that it had a promiscuous mating strategy. Now, a promiscuous mating strategy looks like what we've talked about with respect to the chimpanzees and or bonobos. In other words, they're mating with multiple mates, and it may go either way. It may be mating with many males or mating with many females. It could go either way. It certainly does within the bonobos. However, somewhere along the line in this 4 million years since we've separated from our previous ancestor, this particular ancestor, we evolved a pair bonding mating strategy as well. And we'll just say as well, because it's pretty clear we had a promiscuous mating strategy, just looking at other great apes and what looks like there. We're pretty sure that's where we came from. But we evolved a pair bonding mating strategy. Some people would call that monogamy. I don't call it monogamy because it's not. It's pair bonding, where a male and a female bond for a period of time, 4 to 5 years, and then may or may not stay together after that. And that we know that seems to have been the way we've evolved for several million years. But I want you to remember this, because we have 2 mating strategies in our species. We have a promiscuous mating strategy and we have a pair bonding mating strategy. And we can move back and forth between the 2. We are not special like the Christians seem to think we are. And the whole notion of monogamy and one pair bond for life is actually pretty strange and pretty unusual for our species. I'm not saying it doesn't happen. I'm not saying people aren't happy that way. I'm not here to proselytize one way or the other. I'm just saying people have different strategies. Some people do really well in using a pair bonding strategy, which is great for them. Other people do better or feel more comfortable in a non-pair bonding, in a promiscuous mating strategy. Now, I'm not here to judge what's right or wrong, which is going to get you the most offspring or not, but we seem to move as a species between those 2 over a period of long periods of time. And depending upon the environment, we will use a pair bonding strategy that is promiscuous, or a pair bonding strategy that's or a strategy that's pair bonding. A sexual strategy is pair bonding. Interesting that's going on right now as we speak is sexual expression does respond to the environmental pressures, as do many other things. I mean, we respond to environmental pressures all the time, and we do things that, I mean, I'm wearing glasses right now. That's because if I didn't, the environmental pressures would be different. I wouldn't be able to read. I wouldn't be able to do this talk tonight. There's lots of things we do that are not natural, quote unquote. And environmental pressure pushes us one way or the other, and it can push us in our mating strategies as well. And I'm going to use this as an example and as a teaser, because in a couple of months, I'm going to give another talk that will actually deal with this very thing. But if you look at this graph just came out recently. This is a graph of the age at first marriage of people based upon the decade they were born in. So if you were born in the 1940s, you were pretty much married, and the curve had flattened out by the time you were 25 or so. Same thing for 1950s, 60s, and 70s. If you were born in any of those generations, you were probably married. 70 to 80% of you, those people would have been married by, say, 25 years old. You'll notice in the 1980s, we see a change. They're dropped about 10%. If you were born in 1980s, you did not get married as much as a cohort, and you didn't get married as soon. Now look what's happening in the 1990s. In the 1990s, if you were born in the 90s, you are not getting married at the age that everybody else was getting married, and it's already starting to flatten out. I throw this up here just to say this is pretty strong evidence that we are changing our mating strategy. There's lots of people arguing about you can read all sorts of stuff about why this is happening. I'm not here to say why it is or isn't happening. I'm just saying it's pretty damn good evidence that we're changing our mating strategy. That's not hard to see. The number of people who are getting married has dropped dramatically. Also, the number of people who've been divorced from that first marriage has dramatically increased. And we know that right now, 50% of all marriages will end in divorce, period. That's just the way that this culture is going. Well, if you think about it, that is still a mating strategy. Are we in some people like to call it serial monogamy strategy, where you get married, you stay married for 10 or 15 years or less, you get divorced, you get married again, divorce, get married again. We're seeing that is a mating strategy as well.
So Dr. Ray,
Yeah,
I can't zoom in on my screen to the chart, but there's some
yeah.
interest in the chat about at the lower range there that's showing people being married prior to 15 in the United States. Is that still going on today, or if we were to zoom in, would that only be from like the 1940s and 50s?
Well, I don't see prior to 15. That's kind of where everything starts is at 15.
Oh, looks like
But
Well,
definitely.
we do have a lot of people don't realize that child marriage is a thing in the United States. It is rare, but in some states, there are more allowances for it than others. With the permission of a judge and the courts, people who are 14 years old, 15 years old can be married in many states in the US. So yeah,
my
that is
my
happening.
the third boy in my family got married. He was 15 and his wife was 14 when they got married. And that was done with my parents' permission because she was already pregnant and they didn't want a out of wedlock baby. That was in the 1960s. I know West Virginia hasn't. I don't think they've changed their laws. I don't know about Kansas. That's where this happened, but I don't know. I
Yep.
don't know, Rob.
Texas as
It,
well. There are many
yeah,
states where that can still happen. Yeah.
and Utah, you get the fundamentalists. They're marrying girls off at 14 and 15. That's been quite a scandal, but it's happening. So,
Now, this is
but
extremely dramatic. This is in 50 years. We went from almost 100% of people, maybe 90, being married, when they're in the late 40s, 50s, to it looks like it's leveling off at under 40%, and that's it.
yeah,
Yeah.
and once it levels off, it doesn't change.
Yeah.
There's no evidence that it ever changes. But I'm going to talk about that in another talk. All I brought this up for today is to show us that we can see unequivocal evidence of mating strategy changes. Whether we like them or don't like them, that's not the question. The fact is, as a species, our mating strategy responds to the environment. And a lot of people, I'll just throw out one hypothesis is birth control is what changed our mating strategy or contributes a lot to that. The second thing that some people are saying is the support of women not needing men to raise a child or not needing it as much as they would have in 100 years ago. So those are two hypotheses, and I'm not going to argue about what's right, wrong, or it's good or bad, but we are clearly responding to something in our environment. Moving right along, everything we see in humans can be found in other species. As with any species, we have our own unique combination of evolved sexual characteristics. So here's some questions to think about. Again, I'm not going to talk about all of them, but I'm going to talk about a few of them. Why is the human penis, so large? We have the four great apes, we have by far the largest penis. And it's shaped in a very odd way. If you look at that bonobo penis, his penis looks like my finger. Or the chimpanzee penis looks just like my finger, straight. That's
Darrel,
different.
I'm really holding in some jokes here. I want you to know.
Okay, well, throw them in as appropriate or inappropriate. Let's just say that.
I'm just saying, let's qualify this with most humans and most bonobos. Just so we're being
Okay,
completely
yeah.
accurate.
Why does sex last so long in humans? You notice I told you specifically how long sex lasts in the other primates and the other great apes. But for humans, sex lasts 4 to 10 minutes. Now, you may or may not agree with that. I'm just saying that's what the science shows us. Actual penetrative sex lasts 4 to 10 minutes in humans.
Is that self-reporting, or is this like hidden camera stuff?
See, now we've got Rob on track here with the jokes.
I knew we should not have let him into this talk tonight. I knew we should not have.
I'm sorry, go on.
It's just too easy. If the ground is fertile for the jokes.
Fertile ground, yeah.
See what I did there?
So I'm going to come back and talk about that in a minute. Why does it last so long? Why do humans have testes that are larger than gorillas but smaller than bonobos and chimps? Why does human sperm have different kinds of sperm in it? Why do women menstruate? But the very notion of menstruation it's kind of a rare thing in nature. There are not many species that actually menstruate in the way that humans menstruate. About 5, and only about 5 species, and that would include dolphins, have hidden menstruation, hidden estrus, if you will.
Is this one of the things that's linked to, the fall and Eve being an evil woman because she ate the apple?
I think that was the one about birthing a child being painful, Rob. You were a Catholic. You didn't read your Bible as well.
That's absolutely true. Absolutely true.
Why is the reproductive tract hostile to sperm? It literally is hostile to sperm. The female reproductive tract is dead set on killing sperm, except during certain times of the month and except under certain conditions. Why do women have breasts? I mean, if you look at it, there are not very many species that have breasts that stay around forever. I mean, look at if you have a dog and the dog is pregnant, you'll notice the dog's breast become engorged to give milk, but when the dog's no longer giving milk, they disappear, so to speak. And if you look at chimpanzees, they don't have breasts, but bonobos do have breasts. Very interesting. Bonobos have A-cup breasts, but they're still breasts. They're clearly breasts, whereas the chimps, the male and females, look the same breast-wise, unless the female is actually lactating. So we can see right there, there's something going on. Why do humans have breasts? And more interesting, yeah, go ahead.
It's something that companies like Victoria's Secret are very happy about. Because what would they make and sell?
I don't think they would have a business model if they didn't. And here's another thing. We're talking about evolution. Why are East Asian women wide numbers of East Asian women have almost no breasts? Whereas if you go to Wales, they'll see many, many women have large breasts. What's going on there? We are evolving. We are sexually selecting one another. Why do women in certain tribes in Central and Southern Africa have what's called steatopygia? And that's large butts with lots of fat deposits on the butt. That's actually a self-selected, it's a sexy thing in those cultures. And so those cultures select women with those characteristics. We're selecting and evolving ourselves as much as we're evolving and selecting our chickens that we're going to eat, or birds that want to breed for a certain coloration or whatever. We as humans are breeding ourselves in some ways. And it sounds weird, but why do some cultures, men have preferences for certain sexual characteristics? Whereas you go around the globe to a culture 1,000, 10,000 miles away, men will have a very different preference sexual for a body type or certain body parts. And it can be profound, can be really, really different among just humans. So that shows us that we are sexually selecting ourselves within the confines of this culture, of a culture, not this culture. So we have antagonistic co-evolution going on right within us humans. Now, here's the real pornography here. Look at that.
I think this part might actually get flagged somewhere.
Well, we'll have to deal with that later.
We'll cut this out in post-production. Everyone close your eyes and pray.
Yeah. Well, you don't have to see that. This is for those who might just be listening, I've got 6 pictures of the same penis in different stages of erection. And what you'll see is this is an uncircumcised male, by the way. Which it seems to be foreign to most Americans, but you go over Europe, nobody's circumcised. Or almost only Jewish people circumcised in Europe, I guess you could say. But look at the way the penis is shaped when fully erect. Notice the corona at the end of the penis, and we got to ask the question, why is our penis shaped like that? And that's very different than what we see in the bonobos or the chimpanzees. It's not unusual, but it is unique to our particular species.
Oh, question about the foreskin. Is that something that is not present on the other apes?
Every mammal male has a foreskin. It's only humans that cut it off.
Oh, okay.
For no
because God said he doesn't like humans to have it, even though he designed it that way. Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Exactly, right. And that's one of my pet peeves. We should stop circumcision, period. There's no medical reason for it. There's lots of religious people making all sorts of religious reasons or semi-religious reasons for it, but there's nothing there. Anyway, Dr. Robin Baker out of the University of Manchester, England, had the question, why is the human penis shaped the way it is? So he did a radical experiment. He went down to the local sex shop, bought one of those vaginas. You can just buy a vagina. I don't know if you knew that or not. Silicone vagina, shaped just like a vagina. And he got a dildo that was average size. And he then experimented by squirting liquid into the vagina and took the dildo, and I'll give you the full visual here. And he pumped, Glenda, don't close your eyes. I'm sure you've seen this before. What he pumped the liquid. He put the dildo in the vagina and pumped it. And what he found was he could pump out about 80% of the previously deposited liquid that went into the vagina. Why is that? How is that? Well, it's because the corona acts like a pump. Liquid can slide over it, but when the penis comes out, it takes the liquid out. So when the penis goes in, the liquid previous, whatever that liquid is, probably sperm, semen, flow over the penis. And when the penis comes out, it takes the liquid out. Now, if you're a penis owner, what happens the minute you ejaculate? Within seconds after you ejaculate into your partner, your penis does this. It goes limp. So what we've got here is the notion of a pump. The penis is a pump designed to pump fluid out of a vagina. And as soon as the male ejaculates into the vagina, it deflates. Because if it keeps pumping, it will pump its own liquid out, its own semen, its own sperm out of the vagina, which is interesting. Why, if you look at the chimps and the bonobos, they don't have that coronal ridge. So their penises can't pump anything out, but they produce at least two times more semen than we do. So their strategy, and this is, we can then look at lots of species, but their strategy is to pump tons and tons of semen into the female to impregnate her. If another male comes in and has sex with that female, then hopefully the first male will have fertilized the eggs, or in some cases, among bonobos and chimpanzees, they create a plug, a cervical plug that plugs the cervix up so that more semen cannot get in. And the interesting thing is, within the bonobos and chimpanzees, and a little bit into us, there is a chemical in the semen of males that can dissolve the cervical plug. So look at this as a war, but it's not even a war between the male and the female reproductive tract. It's a war between the semen of one man or male and semen of the next male. There's all sorts of crazy stuff going on here. I could go on and on about the sperm themselves, but we won't go there. If you're interested, read Robin Baker's book. I forgot to tell you about that one, Kara.
It's all right. I can get it on the fly. Tell me now.
Robin Baker. I forget the name of it right now. It's called Sperm Wars. I think it's Sperm Wars. I think it's what.
Got it. Sperm Wars: Infidelity, Sexual Conflict, and Other Bedroom Battles.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Really interesting book, and with real, I mean, the guy really went out there and even got people to come into his laboratory and have sex while he filmed them. So Rob, that answers a part of your question.
Yeah, I was thinking that might have been some of the case. Be really interesting
Yo,
to get volunteers for that.
yeah, he found all sorts of stuff, but I don't have time, and that's not the focus of my talk here. So we have, as humans, we have a penis pump, and we've got to ask the question: why do humans have a penis pump? What's going on there? Well, we're obviously created, there must have been serious evolutionary pressure for males to develop and evolve this kind of a penis. And it's designed to pump semen out. And then it pumps the semen out. Remember how long sex lasts? 4 to 10 minutes. It takes 4 to 10 minutes to pump the other guy's semen out. And then you deposit your semen into the reproductive tract of the female. That's what's going on. We have a penis pump. That is antagonistic coevolution. And it's antagonistic between the male-female reproductive tracts, antagonistic with other male depositors of sperm.
So the fact that a male especially gets very, very tired after orgasm, and is that, you think, some kind of evolutionary function to keep them around and just hang out with the female as opposed to running away and letting another man sneak in?
Wouldn't surprise me a bit. I don't know what evidence we need for that, but wouldn't surprise me at all. There's a lot of things that happen. There's cascading endorphins that happen after sex that does keep the man there, does make the man go to sleep, and starts that bonding process with oxytocin that begins the pair bonding experience. You don't pair bond after a single sex act. It takes many sex acts to bring the pair bond together. So it's the beginning, Rob, I'd say it's the beginning of our pair bond strategy, or it can be the beginning of our pair bond strategy. So here's the evidence that we're looking. We are a multi-mate species. We are not a monogamous species, and there's almost no species on this planet that's truly monogamous. And if you were a live audience, I would ask you, how many of you know someone that is monogamous? And in the group, I would probably see anywhere up to 50% of the people raise their hand that they know someone who's monogamous. And my answer to that would be, if it wasn't you, how would you know? I know that my parents claimed they were their only sex partners between the two of them for their whole lives. After they died, I got evidence that they were lying to me. I know that two of my grandparents said the same thing. They were married for over 50 years. And I know they claimed they were monogamous from their whole life, just to each other. I knew from the time I was 12 years old, they were lying to me. So people don't tell you the truth. And there's very few people that don't have at least 2 sex partners in their lifetime. The average female in the United States right now, I think, is up to 8, and the average male is up to 12, I think. The stats have changed a little bit, but the fact is that we almost never stop with one sex act. And Christians, the definition of monogamy is this: one sex partner for life. That's what Jesus said, one sex partner for life. So if you've had more than one sex partner in your life, by definition, you are not monogamous. If you had a boyfriend or a girlfriend that you had sex with before you got married to your current partner, you're not monogamous. You are exclusive. That's another concept. And you could stay exclusive, and my grandparents may have been exclusive for 50 years. I don't know. But I do know that at least one of my 2 grandparents on my dad's side had sex before she had sex with my step grandfather. Let's just put it that way. Anyway, it just illustrates that DNA also shows that a lot of children are not the progeny of the man that thinks they are. And that can go back to as much as 20% of children do not belong to the man who thinks he's the father. That goes back to a 1948 study in Britain that showed something like 19% of children born to a woman were not from the man that thought he was the father. That was an accidental discovery. They found out about that after World War II. Anyway, so sex, what we've done as a species, we have repurposed sex for bonding, for recreation, and we're also learning that sex is healthy. Having a certain amount of sex helps us in many ways, psychologically, physically, and so forth. So we use sex to bond, which means we've got a good pair bond. We use it for recreation. You know, we have a lot of fun together if we're involved with somebody else, and that enhances the bonding, of course. And we can have sex from 1,000 to 10,000 times for every live birth. Even if we did not have birth control, we would still be having vast amounts of sex for every live birth. I mean, it's just, if you look back, you think our great-grandparents weren't having sex? My grandfather, he only had 3 kids, but I'm sure they had more than 3 times. Queen Victoria, the rumors were she loved sex, and she and Prince Philip? No, it wasn't Prince Philip. I forget his name. That were very sexually active. She bragged about it. So we know that she had like 13 children or something like that. She had a lot of children, partly because they were having lots of sex, probably. But still, it was lots more sex than they actually had children. So it helps us to pair bond if we're having lots of sex. And that keeps the man around to help raise the children, to protect the family. So that's one of the reasons why we, come on, move. Okay, there we go. Now, masturbation, as we all know, I like to talk about that. Hey, how am I doing, Kara, on time-wise?
You're doing okay. We've got probably like, if you want to go for 5 to 10 more minutes, that would be okay, but we can go to Q&A whenever you're done. Okay,
well, let me get on through this then. So masturbation is really, really common among almost all primates, and humans are not the least of it. We do it a lot. And part of the reason we do it is to keep the pipes clean and keep the sperm fresh. Sperm goes senile, and that's the term they actually use. Biologists use sperm goes senile in about 5 days. So after 5 days, you don't want to be impregnating a woman with a sperm that's bad. So that's an important reason to masturbate, to keep the sperm fresh. Female masturbation does the same thing. It keeps the vaginal tract fresh and healthy, female masturbation actually stimulates the immune system and actually makes orgasm more likely. The research shows that women who masturbate on a fairly regular basis orgasm with their partners much easier and much more often. So it's just a simple, you use it or lose it kind of an idea, I guess. Masturbation also is a great stress relief, and it promotes health and promotes the right hormones for our body, because we're made to reproduce. It's right there. If we're not using it, something's getting out of balance in all likelihood. Now, when the Pope tells you about sex, what the Pope is saying, he wants you to have sex like a dog. This is my dog, my former dog, Sugar. Sweet dog, really sweet. But, when a dog only gets in heat maybe once a year, twice a year. And a dog only wants to mate during the time they're in heat. So the Pope is saying only have sex when you're fertile, when you're ready to have children. And that's papal sex. And you know what? That's the sex that most species on this planet have. In the summertime, if you've been to my house, I live in the woods, you will hear the crickets out there, the frogs, the locusts, and they're yelling their heads off because they need to get laid. They only get one night to get laid, and then that's the end of it. And so most animals only mate when they're ready to mate, period. They don't mate year-round. They just mate that one time. In the whole summer, they may get one night to mate. If they don't make it, they're SOL. And that's the way a lot of animals mate. We are not those kinds of animals. We're more like chimpanzees. We're more like bonobos, that we mate whenever we want to. And the females are oftentimes receptive, even if they're not in estrus, especially among bonobos. So we're really closely related in our mating strategy to bonobos, actually, because we can mate at any time, regardless of how fertile the female is. But Christian sex says we're only allowed to have sex and when for babies. That's Catholic stuff. But even that's seeping into the Protestant world and purity culture and all that sort of stuff. So I think we need to realize that our understanding of our sexuality has been strongly influenced by the Christian culture that's around us. And there's all sorts of religious cultural pollution in which I mentioned earlier, circumcision. That's a religious notion started by a really uptight guy named Dr. Kellogg in the 1800s. And the purpose of his campaign to cut the foreskins off of little boys was because it reduced or stopped boys from masturbating. That was his theory. And so we are stuck with a man who had a crazy religious idea, anti-masturbation, in the 1890s. That's when he was pushing this. And he pushed it hard enough, but by the time the 1930s rolled around, most hospitals were starting to circumcise without asking any questions, because everybody just knew that helped reduce boys masturbating when they got to be adolescents or adults. I'll bet you didn't know, most of you didn't know, that's why we cut boys' foreskins off, to stop them from masturbating, according to Dr. Kellogg. And if you eat the cereal, Kellogg's cereal, he developed that to reduce the urge to masturbate. Feed your boys this. It didn't taste near as good back then because they didn't put loads of sugar in it. So that will reduce their desire to. And this guy was nuts, and he was married, and there's no evidence that he ever had sex because he never had any children, and all he could do was talk about how terrible sex was. Maybe he tried it once. I don't know. Okay. I could talk all day about that. So I did write a book on this whole subject. I don't actually, I'm talking about stuff that's not in the book, although I have a lot of stuff I can't talk about today. But if you're interested, look at this book. I forgot to give you that one too, Kara. Sex and God.
I know about that one.
Yeah, I hope a lot of you do. But I wrote the book because I want people to get over this residual effects of religious sex, whether it's Catholic or Baptist or Buddhist. And yes, Buddhists are very sex negative. Don't let them tell you anything different, unless they're California Buddhists. That's a different animal there. I wanted to begin a framework for our sexuality, and I wanted to celebrate positive, natural sexuality. We can find out who we are without reference to any God or any dogma around purity culture. I wanted to teach seculars to be more open and to free themselves of the shame and guilt that they were forced on them as they were growing up by their religion. I call myself a secular sexual. I'm not a Baptist sexual or a Catholic sexual. I'm a secular sexual, and my sexuality is not tied to religious guilt and shame that is espoused by the Mormons or the Christians, Muslims, Hindus, Buddhists, you name it, they all have it. So I say, let's not act like them. We should be, if you're bisexual, be proud of it. If you're homosexual, that's okay. Be proud of it. That's what I love about the LGBTQ community. They have come out and said, I don't give a shit what you think. Here's who I am. And why can't we do the same thing as secular sexuals? I think we can follow the lead of the LGBTQ community. If you're hetero, if you're trans, I don't care. Be out about it, because the more you normalize this stuff, the harder it is for them to push us back into the hole that they want us to stay in. We've already seen that. We've seen huge strides in the LGBTQ community. And as much as Mike Johnson wants, or Donald Trump or anybody else wants to push us back into that hole, I think the cat's out of that bag. We can fight back, and we've got the power to fight back about it. Also, I masturbate, and I'm not afraid to talk about it. I'm not afraid to say it. Why can't we all own that we are normal? We are normal animals. We are normal primates, and we like to pleasure ourselves. And if we don't have a good sex partner, or we don't have a partner at all, What are we going to do with that sexual energy? Let's be open about it. Nothing wrong with it, unless you're a Christian. And don't let any of that purity culture bullshit or sex addiction or porn addiction stuff. I'll be talking about that in a couple months, but we'll come back and talk about that later. If you're monogamous or exclusive, that's fine. Enjoy yourself, be pair bonded, and stay that way for life if you want. But if you're not, if you're non-monogamous, if you're polyamorous, Glenda's done a great talk on this several times. I love her talk. In fact, her talk is the best talk I've ever seen on this subject. And it's even better than my talk. So there you go. All right. So be out, be proud, come out, and don't let the Christians shame us. Don't let the Muslims. We're not Mormons. We don't have to follow their rules or guidelines. If you're closeted, come out. Let people know who you are and how you express your sexuality. Religion distorts our sexuality and demands that we be what we aren't. That priest who molested and raped young children was telling everybody else to be celibate or to only have sex for procreation, stuff like that. And that Baptist minister who systematically was a predator of 15-year-old girls in his church. I mean, you can read every single day, you can see that the leaders, the top people in these various religions are all expressing their sexuality in inappropriate ways. Hopefully we don't do that. We're in touch with our sexuality, who we are and what we are, and how we want to interact and use our sexuality with and pleasuring ourselves or pleasuring other people. So anyway, that's my sermon there. In case you hadn't noticed it, I can preach with the best of them here. So I am a sex positive atheist and I am proud of it. I am a secular sexual. And I think some of you have seen this picture before, but this is my expression of who I am. I wouldn't even have the fig leaf on, except I was told that would definitely get us stopped on YouTube. Anyway, thank you for sticking with me throughout this whole thing, and I will stop sharing here. If I can get it. Well, there you go.
I love it. And thank you for leaving us with those visuals. Anybody who's just listening to the audio is going to have to come find the YouTube video and see if that made it through the post-production process.
Well, there's another reason. There's another reason to attend it live and not wait for it to come out.
That's true. That's true. And this is a good one. So let's go to questions. First I'm gonna drop in the chat the links to the books and everything that you shared with us. So dropping those one more time. And yes, thank you for sharing that with us. We've been looking forward to this. We affectionately call this the Duck Sex Talk. And we are so glad that we got to have it here tonight. So, okay, we've got questions. The first one that we have is someone says, and for those of you that are new here, we're going to read the questions first that people sent in the chat, and then after we go to the Hangout, we'll let people unmute and ask questions. Okay, so the first one is, someone said, somewhere I was taught that animals where the female was larger tend to be monogamous. Is there any truth to that? And we had some back and forth in the chat about that, and I'm told spiders don't count, but I mean,
well, I was just getting ready to say, if you looked at the insect world, no, exactly. I don't see a lot of that. And show me the monogamous species. There just are almost none out there. They're very, very rare. Now, if you look at the prairie vole. A prairie vole, there's almost no difference in the size of the male and female, and they're a monogamous species. But they're very closely related. In fact, so closely related they can mate with the mountain vole. There's another one, vole, V-O-L-E. The mountain vole is virtually identical in species, in everything, and can even crossbreed with the prairie vole. But the mountain vole is promiscuous, whereas the prairie vole is monogamous. Interesting experiments that were done about 15 or 20 years ago on these two animals, because it's so rare to have a truly monogamous species. And they started experimenting with oxytocin, and they found out that if they gave the mountain vole oxytocin, the mountain vole started behaving as a monogamous animal. If you put a blocker, oxytocin blocker, to the monogamous species, then the prairie vole, the monogamous species, started mating promiscuously. Since that time, we realized that oxytocin is really important in creating a pair bond. And if you can't produce oxytocin, then you probably don't get pair bonded, or it's harder to get pair bonded. We've also looked at oxytocin and vasopressin. Vasopressin is a male equivalent of oxytocin, although we have oxytocin in males too. But vasopressin tends to function like oxytocin does. And if the male has lots of vasopressin and or oxytocin, the male can pair bond with the female. Females don't generally have vasopressin, or not as much. They mainly have oxytocin. Females have more of the hormone that creates pair bonding. Now, that seems to be not just because females want to pair bond with males, but females want to pair bond with their offspring, with their babies, with their children. And that's true whether it's a bonobo ape or a human. So it's not necessarily the size. I guess I'm answering the question in a roundabout way, Kara. It's what's going on with the hormones. Because we've got experiments where they would spray oxytocin in the noses of humans and then have them, it's a harmless drug, and then they would do certain activities and find out that behavior of males and females actually changed as a direct result of how much oxytocin they experience. That's a whole nother area of psychology, evolutionary psychology, but it shows how important the hormones are in that particular case. I don't know, is that answering the question, you think, or close to it?
I think that's close enough.
The only monogamous species I can speak with any intelligence is the prairie vole, because there just aren't very many of them.
That's fair. I've also heard, this is the kind of the opposite of what the question was asking, but in some of the species where the males are so much larger than the females, that has more to do with the males competing amongst themselves, and there's some kind of selection for being larger so that they're able to defeat their rivals or whatever to get access to the females. But it's nothing to do with this narrative that, oh, the man is larger than the woman so that he may rule over her and dominate her. It's nothing to do with that. They're competing amongst themselves.
Yeah, right. And here's the thing, humans are moderately dimorphic. Mm-hmm. Chimpanzees are pretty strongly dimorphic. Male chimpanzees are maybe 50% bigger than females or more. Gorillas, obviously dimorphic, with the males being 2 to 3 times more. But humans, the human male is 20 to 30% bigger than the human female. And that is sexual dimorphism. So the fact that we're moderately sexually dimorphic says something about our mating strategy. In this case, do males have to compete for females? If they do, the males tend to get bigger. If they don't, the males tend to get smaller. So there's what you're saying is a theory that has quite a bit of evidence behind it. I'm not sure we know precisely for every species, but it seems to hold true.
Right. Like, to your point, there are many factors that are influencing the characteristics and practices that species are engaging in. It's probably foolish to assign all of our explanation to one thing.
Well, and it's quite true for primates. Mm-hmm. It seems that theory seems to hold pretty true for primates. Mm-hmm. And mammals in general. I mean, look at cattle, or look at deer, or look at antelope. If you look, no matter which species you talk about, the males there's quite a number of species. The males are significantly bigger than the females.
Mm-hmm. And then you've got spiders.
Well, insects It's such a whole other thing. You're the expert there. I'll leave it
No,
to you.
no. I reject the premise. I will not discuss spiders here. I'm feeling itchy now.
Okay. I should not have said that. I'm sorry.
Moving on to the next question. Rob, please save us from spiders.
Oh my. Okay. I do not have arachnophobia, but there are no other spider questions. So, all right. I think this question is going to be referring to the, let's see, the type of ape where most of the males in the tribe were prevented from having sex. Maybe this is what this is talking about. How does required celibacy fit into the evolution of mating strategies in terms of sexual selection?
Well, I don't know what required celibacy would be.
That's what I was kind of thinking that might mean. You mentioned that like in maybe it was regular chimpanzees that or maybe it was gorillas that most of the males aren't actually allowed to mate in the
Right.
so maybe that's
Well,
what he meant by that.
okay, yeah, that's a problem in all of nature. Now, and I'll go back and I'm actually going to talk about this in my other talk too. If you think about those locusts that are yelling outside my house in the middle of summer, most of the males are yelling as loud as they can to get the attention of the females. But the females are only going to mate with a certain proportion of males. So that means the majority of all males of all species never reproduce. Whether you're a locust or a frog or a human, the majority of males never reproduce. You always have far more males than are needed, and in a given population. Whether if it's a deer or an elk population, the male deer will be able to dominate 5, 6 other females, and they will only mate with that male. Whereas there's got to be as many males as females out there. So that means all those other males are not getting mating opportunities. Among the chimpanzees, generally speaking, the top 3 males, 2 or 3 males, can have the opportunity to mate with every every female. However, those females can be sneaky too. Sometimes a female will say, I'm getting tired of mating with those top 3 guys, and she will sneak off into the bush and mate with one of the lower status males. And that's been documented quite a bit by Jane Goodall and other people like her. However, if she should get caught having sex with one of these lower status males, there could be hell to pay. The male may get his shit beat out of him or even killed, and she may get severe punishment as well. They're pretty possessive, those top 3 males. However, if a younger or a lower status male can challenge one of the 2 or 3 top males, or even disrupt the entire alliance, then that male can take over and then gain access to all the other females. There's a really interesting story in Jane Goodall's research of a low status male chimpanzee discovered gas cans. She was camping out. They had a whole camp out where they would use to study and observe the chimpanzees without interfering with them. And they would have gas cans to fill their various machines. Well, when the gas cans were empty, this particular chimpanzee discovered they made a lot of noise. So what he did was grab one of these gas cans and run through the tribe and bang that gas can as loud as he can, scared everybody in the tribe, especially the higher status males. And before you know it, he had become the top male just from banging on the damn gas can. It's crazy. It's really a funny story, but it showed how one single, very intelligent, obviously, chimpanzee could upset the whole hierarchical sexual status within the tribe, so to speak. And he didn't lose his status. He always knew how to bang the gas can.
So as has been said in the chat, the drummer gets the girls.
That's really good. I got a quick story. My son was 6 or 7 years old, and somewhere right on behind me, I've got the Jane Goodall's book, In the Shadow of Man. Wonderful book, just really cool book. She published it about 1968. I'd read it; it'd been on my shelf for years. My son at age 5 or 6 discovered the book on my shelf, and he looked through it. He loved seeing. She had lots of pictures of the various chimpanzees, and he would grab me frequently, like once a week. Can we read the monkey book, Dad? So we would sit down and I'd quote read the monkey book to him. And I would read it in such a way that it was educational. I couldn't, it was an adult book, so he's not going to understand all the words. Well, Jane Goodall came to town to give a lecture right here in Kansas City. This would have been about 1984, 5, 6, somewhere in that time frame. And I told him, you know, that book we like to read. Well, the woman that wrote that book is coming to town, and she's gonna speak. You want to go? And oh, he was all excited. Yes, he wanted to go. So we got tickets in the nosebleed section up in the theater, and he got to hear her whole talk. And she had lots of slides and pictures of all the same animals that were in the book. And he thought that was really great. Well, at the end of it, we're walking down the stairway to come down to the main lobby, and she's on a table there signing books. And he brought the book. He's holding the book like this, just cute as could be, you know, just like it's a baby or something. And he wants to, and I said, you want to try and get her to sign it? I told him authors will sign your book. And oh, he was so excited to get the book signed. But as we come down the stair, we see 500 other people sitting there buying books and wanting to get the book signed. And I'm thinking, we'll be here forever, and we probably still won't get there. She'll be gone. And somebody noticed him and said, is that Jane's book? And he shows it to her. Well, let this boy go up there. And before you know it, the whole crowd is pushing me and my son Aaron up to and we got pushing until we're like third in line. And finally she looks up and she sees Aaron there with this book, and her eyes just get really big. She says, is that my book? And I said, yes, it's first edition. And he'd sure love it if you'd sign it for him. He stood up there and she started talking to him, and she must have talked to him for 5 minutes. And she asked him about the book. I mean, they were really talking about the monkey book. So I have a signed copy on my shelf of Jane Goodall, who signed my book for my son. Anyway, it was a sweet thing. I really, really loved it.
I love that. That's so
Yeah.
cute. Amazing. Okay, well, we are about out of time, but I have to ask this one last question, and then we'll go to the hangout and we can ask the rest of them. But I gotta know, someone is wondering, you said that sex lasts between 4 to 10 minutes in humans, but you didn't say how long masturbation lasts. Is that 4 to 10 minutes as well?
I haven't timed it in too many people besides myself.
So we need a poll question about this,
Yeah.
I think.
And we're also going to have to break that up into the different sexes, I think.
Mhm.
That's probably true too, Rob. Yeah, that's probably true too. So I don't know. I just know it can last various lengths of time for myself. I also know various female identified partners that I've had would say the same thing. Sometimes they want a long session, sometimes they want a quickie. I mean,
Yep.
I don't know. So
Yep.
come back in a couple months. I'm going to be giving a talk called should I tell them, Kara, or not?
Yes, this was a perfect setup for that.
Okay. Masturbation, porn, and your sex life. That's the name of the upcoming talk.
Well,
Brand new talk.
I predict we're going to have a large turnout for that if we advertise that widely.
Yes.
Wildly and wildly.
And it may get censored. Who knows?
Who knows?
I won't have a lot of pictures like I had in this one. It's a whole different kind of talk. But anyway,
Don't tell them that.
Oh, okay. Lots of pornography. Let's put it that way.
Love it. Well, Well, we're going to look forward to that. We're holding you to it. That's going to be in the new year. We are definitely looking forward to that. So stay tuned for more. And with that, is there anything else you want to mention before we wrap up and go to the hangout?
I would really encourage you to read my book, Sex and God. I wrote it for people just like you. If you left religion, you'll identify with a lot of it. If you were raised in purity culture, you will. And the other books that I mentioned, the one book I thought was fascinating was the Sex at Dawn. It's. I told the author, he actually endorsed endorsed my book, but I told him I thought his book was the second best book ever written on sex. He thought that was funny. He sold a lot more than I did, I'm sure of that. And the other book is The Myth of Monogamy. That one really will blow your mind because it's biologists talking about which species are truly monogamous and which aren't. And it's getting kind of dated. It's, I don't know, 15, 20 years old. But what they basically did was look at a whole lot of different animals and their actual mating patterns as we know them, not as the myths. I mean, like the myth that swans are monogamous. Genetics prove that that is not true, but they are socially monogamous. They may mate for life, but they don't have sex with the same partner for life. And I'll clarify, that means they're socially monogamous. They stay together as penguins do, for example, but they're not sexually monogamous. It is rare to find a sexually monogamous species, but socially monogamous species are much more common. And that's why we have, until genetics came along, the myth that swans were monogamous, for example, could easily be verified because you always saw them together, but you couldn't verify that those eggs. With genetics, we found out the eggs are not necessarily from the male that she's mated to.
So another extension of the subject, and I'd like to mention it now, is we just booked an author, Nathan Lentz, whose new book I'm going to put in the chat is The Sexual Evolution, not Revolution, The Sexual Evolution, The Deep Roots of Sex, Gender, and Sexuality. He's going to be talking that in May, but here's a sneak. His book was just released on that subject, so it's going to be sort of in the vein of today's talk, I think.
And I'm going to go hide after he talks because I'm sure he knows a hell of a lot more than I know. So that'll be, I need to go get that book. I need to go get that book and find out if I need to update some of my data.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that too. We've had Nathan on previously, and he promised us this new book about a year and a half ago. So I'm ready to see what the latest is. But he's a biologist, so he'll be coming from that perspective on it. So I love having people from different fields come and talk about similar
he
topics.
spoke at the New York City Skeptic Camp this weekend, which I was at, and he only got a half hour. Actually, because of the Q&A part, there was only 20 or so minutes to talk. So we're going to give him a lot more time, I told him.
Absolutely. I am ready for it. I can't wait. I got to add that book to my Goodreads list, y'all. I'm getting behind. So I'm going to try, but I'm going to get to that one for sure. Okay, well, let's roll on. We've got some more questions. We'll do them in the Hangout, and we'll go over the poll results as well. But let's go ahead and wrap up because we are at time. Thank you, Dr. Ray, for the fascinating talk, which we knew was going to be great. And we came here for the PowerPoint and the images and the stories, and you delivered. And so sorry to anyone that didn't watch it live. You may not be getting the full experience, but it's worth hearing them live and watching it live. So we're looking forward to your future talk, as well as some of our other upcoming speakers and topics. There's the one Rob mentioned with Dr. Lentz. We also have David Fitzgerald coming up, John Gleason, Forrest Valkai, Secular Rarity, Stephen Novella, Erica Matthews, and don't forget our Festivus episode. That'll be our fun holiday episode coming up. So come back every Monday. We'll be here, and can't wait to see y'all next week. And don't forget to join us on the social medias. If you follow us, it helps other people find us too. Like, subscribe, share. If you feel comfortable, it's okay if you don't, but if you do, you can find us on Facebook. We have a main page and a support group page. We also have Instagram and TikTok. And of course, most of our previous RfRx recordings are on YouTube. So check us out in all of those places. And Rob, how else can people get involved?
Well, by volunteering with us, the volunteers here have learned that healing can come from helping others do the same. So we find purpose and meaning by volunteering for Recovering from Religion. All of this organization services are supported by volunteers, and we're always in need of people. There are all sorts of jobs besides working the helplines, which is a thing that gets advertised a lot. I'm glad it does get advertised in places like the Line and the Atheist Experience, but we have a lot of other things that need people too. We need people to find, to vet, and to post the resources into our resource database for our clients to use and for the agents to use. We need people to host the support groups we talked about earlier, and also moderating the online community chats in the Slack channels. We need people to provide IT support. And even for the kind of thing we're doing right now, if this is the kind of thing you'd like to do, you can help with these shows, either the live portion or the editing to get them up on the interwebs. To apply as a volunteer for anything, fill out the form on our main page, which is at the very top of recoveringfromreligion.org. And I also want to mention, if you want a refresher on the services that we offer here, or you want to send this information to somebody who you care about, a really good thing we have is a 3-minute video. It's just 3 minutes long, and it goes through the 20 minutes we took to tell you about everything in the beginning. It's called RfR What We Do, and it's at the bottom of our main page, recoveringfromreligion.org. You can Google that on the web, or go to YouTube, look at our channel, and it's RfR What We Do.
Awesome. Thank you, Rob. So check that out. And to wrap us up for the evening, let me bring on our fabulous executive director, Gail Jordan. Gail, welcome to the program. Please share your thoughts with us.
Thank you, Kara, and thank you everyone for coming. Darrel, what a fantastic presentation. I've heard this multiple times and I learn something every time. Whoever is in attendance tonight, if you're coming from the world of religion, you know that this is so the opposite vibe that we all got to talk about sexuality when we were religious people. And I'll tell you, it's isn't it enlightening, and isn't it freeing, and isn't it liberating to talk about something that for some of us was a source of shame and guilt and embarrassment. And it's so human and it's so natural. And Darrel does such a good job of bringing it home and letting us see how natural it is. That leads me to say, here at Recovering from Religion, we talk a lot about what our mission statement is. We do want to provide hope, healing, and support to those who are struggling with issues of doubt and non-belief. And sometimes that can be heavy. But if you've spent a lifetime in religion, you have a lifetime of undoing to do. And our online community, our helpline, our support groups, yes, there are moments, and sometimes these things are very serious, particularly our online community. That's the place where we can have informal, casual discussions about just such a topic as this. And the folks, our leadership has described to you what that is, that you come into the community via the helpline, either a chat or a phone call, and you don't have to have a long, heavy conversation with one of our trained agents. You just say, I heard about the online community and I'd like to join. And they'll maybe ask you a couple of questions. They'll get some contact information so that they can send you a link, because as our folks have described, that's not public facing. You have to go that way. And once you get in there, you decide what subgroup you want to belong to. And in those subgroups, you can initiate the conversation. There are moderators in there. Sometimes they'll drop in a discussion question. Sometimes people will drop a link, a video, a lecture, a book, and say, well, has anybody seen this or heard this or watched this or read this? And that's where those conversations take place. So no matter where you are in your journey, in your deconstruction journey, or maybe you haven't even begun your deconstruction journey, you just want to be part of that, to start getting information and start figuring this out because you have questions about it, because here you are, Recovering from Religion, RfRx. we invite you to join us at our online communities. Often we're quick to throw these words around, but let the words guide you in the different things that we have to offer. Our support groups are serious. They are support groups and they follow a support group format. And those are not, I wouldn't call them terribly casual. Yes, friendships are formed and yes, there are some light moments, but that is peer support. It's led by a trained leader. Everyone will have the opportunity to discuss it. We talk about how religion has kept us from living the full lives that we all want to live, that kind of thing. Our hangouts, that's exactly what the word implies. It's a much more casual get together. We have those on a weekly basis. The folks have mentioned them. Our support groups are scheduled, our hangouts are scheduled, but those are two very, very different things. So if you'll come inside of recovery, this is bait. This is what this is. If you'll come inside Recovering from Religion, it's there that you'll see all the different opportunities to do these kinds of things. You'll see all of our links for the support groups. You'll see in the online community, all the different communities that you can choose to belong to. So you don't have to be in the throes of your deconstruction to join us in our online community. Come on in and be a part of us. And that may lead you at some point when you're ready, and if you want to partnering with us and becoming a volunteer so that you in turn can pay it forward to steal shamelessly from the movie, to pay it forward to the folks that come behind you. So please consider joining us if you will. Please hang out and stay for the hangout. Darrel's going to stay for a little bit and answer some of those questions that didn't get answered. Darrel, thank you. Thank you to Kara and to Rob for co-hosting, for Glenda for troll stomping, for Nikki for streaming, all of the people that do all of the things, and then the behind the scenes things and the post-production things. It's a team, it's a family. And if you would consider joining us, we'd love that. Stay for the hangout. See y'all next week.